Jere B. I am the EntreMusician, and so are you. Welcome to the EntreMusician channel. If you've been following our videos for some time, you'll realize that we are recording in a different space. Today, I am at my own little corner of the world. I call it the Beehive. I've been calling it that way before Beyonce. I'm a little older, not as well known, not as much money, but it's the Beehive. Anyway, my corner, my space. And here, because we've been doing a little bit of videos for the sounddoctrine.com website, whereby I've just released my debut solo CD called Fish and Grits. Want you to absolutely get a copy of Fish and Grits. It's a departure from our Sound Doctrine stuff, but it's funky. Nevertheless, I'll talk about that a little bit more toward the end of the video, but keep that in your craw. Fish and Grits coming at you. But we're here at the EntreMusician, and what I want to talk about is seasons. Understanding seasons as an EntreMusician. There's a lot to unpack. I'm going to go as fast as I can, but I want to be as thorough as I can. I'm living this transition, so I want to share with you what I've learned about seasons. But before we do that, we always have to do this, and this is going to be interesting because I am not at Listen Studio, so I don't have a current bottle of Vocal. But what I do have is one of the older bottles. This was a prototype about 5 or 6 years ago when they started the company, and I keep this one on my desk as a reminder of progress because they've cut it down, and you've seen the other videos, hopefully, with the new flavors of Vocal and the new sleek look. But this is what I have, and I want you to go there because all of our videos are sponsored by these wonderful people. If you talk all day or sing all night, you absolutely have to go to drinkvocal.com. Go there, get your voice the help that it needs, because your voice is the only instrument that you cannot buy. Dig that. All right, understanding seasons. Understanding the season that you are in as an EntreMusician is absolutely critical. Now, here where I am in Northeast Ohio, we have all 4 seasons. We're not like California or any other geography, which it may be sunny all the time. Here in Youngstown, Ohio, there is winter, spring, summer, and fall. Some comes later, some are more severe than others, but we will experience all 4 seasons. And right now, the leaves are on the ground. I mean, it's not really officially the start of summer. They say so after Labor Day, so here we are, but the summer of 19 is over. And we who live on my street here by a place called Mill Creek Park, we know that we need to get our leaves out. We need to get our tractors out. Some of us hire lawn services, which come because there's a tremendous amount of trees, and you got to get up the leaves. That's just the way it is, and this is the season we're in. Barbecuing is over pretty much. There might be one more steak to put on the grill, but for the most part, fall is happening in Northeast Ohio. Well, it's interesting because as an EntreMusician, you really do need to understand where you are in your season. It's almost funny. It's a little sad, but it's almost funny, a little bit hilarious to see someone who is working out of their season, especially a musician, especially someone in the creative field, unless that's their genre, unless they're doing a comedy routine, to see a serious musician who is out of their element because they are in the wrong season. At least in here, they don't understand the season they're in. It is a sad state, and it is critical. I'm going to share a few of the bombs that I've dropped, a few of the bridges that I unfortunately burned because I did not understand the season that I was in. But before I do that and speak personally, there are 4 general seasons, just like winter, spring, summer, and fall. And for more on that from a leadership perspective, you should check out Jim Rohn, because he really does put in perspective the winter, spring, summer, and fall of a person's life, of a person's business career. I'm just adopting that much of it from the model of being an EntreMusician because it's important. But my philosophy comes from as you're building your career, and it doesn't matter your age, so I'm not talking chronologically here, but I'm talking about from the career standpoint. Whenever you decide to start, you are going to start in a phase that is building. That's just for everybody. And you got to know what season you're in while you're building. You have to be putting your team together. You have to know your audience. You have to know your demographic. You have to know those basic things about building a fan base, and all of your focus has to be on that. You can't be having these pie in the sky dreams. I mean, you might want to put something up as a goal. This is where I'm going to be. But right now, understand the season that you're in. Don't act like you're somewhere where you actually are not. If you have 15 fans, focus on the 15 fans. Build those 15 up to 50. Once you get to 50, celebrate it, and then begin building for 100. But make sure that your team is together, that if you have a band, unless you're a solo artist, that everybody knows this is where we are. We won't stay here, but this is what we have to concentrate on, and this is what we have to perfect. The second stage, obviously, is maintaining where you are, because there's a lot to be said about being a manager. And as independent musicians, we're often self-managers. Very few of us have someone on our team who is taking that role. Is usually the leader of the band, or maybe a couple of you who are making those major decisions about booking and whatnot. But what you want to do is you want to, in that management phase, is to create systems which will work for you, so that you want a flow chart and an organizational chart of what is happening. Hey, we've built these 50 fans. We've built these 100 fans. We have 300 people on our mailing list. Now, what is going to be the flow of communication? What is going to be the flow of organization as we, develop where we are into transitioning on to the next phase? And here's why that's vital, because often when we get that following and when the club is starting to fill up and whatnot, we immediately think that we're in the next phase. We're not. We have to manage and maintain where we are so that that foundation is solid and cemented. So that's a very critical phase. You can just move right past it. Boom, we blew out the club. Hey, wait a minute, we blew out that other club. And what about last week? It was standing room only. So now no. Have that relationship with those club owners, with those promoters, with those fans, with those booking agents, that we are a solid band, and make that name. That's where you really establish your brand. Make that name absolutely solid for you. And you will find that now you have a nice solid floor to stand on, which could take us to the third transition, and that is the transition of expansion. Now with expansion, we're saying, hey, well, we've covered this city, quote unquote, I'm saying it sensitively, but it belongs to us. We know that we are now not the opening act anymore. We have the status of being the headliner in this city, and there are 3 or 4 bands that are opening before our act comes, and so now we're solidified in this. So now we're going to expand into this city, or those cities, or the state, or beyond the state. It could be where you've done all of these things and it's flowed very well, and now you're in the tri-state area and you're moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, or you're moving from the West Coast to the Midwest, or whatever the case may be, and now you're in expansion. Expansion mode is also very critical, because with expansion mode, you have to make sure that those steps that you're taking are almost methodical. Now, again, at this stage, it would probably be great to have some professional guidance, some consultation, be it a full-time manager or someone that you can rely on who has been there. Maybe you've partnered with a band or artist that's bigger than you are, who has already been on that side of the bridge and can say, well, here are steps that you need to take. Because remember, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in just a couple of minutes, but when you're expanding, you're saying yes to something and you're saying no to something else. So the priorities are greater risk factors for you because there's only so much time in the day, there's only so much money in the bank, there's only so many resources that you have, even physical resources that you have to put into balance into what needs to happen as you expand. Here's the dangerous point here, and I mean this very critically. Here's the dangerous point when you're expanding, that many musicians fall prey to drug and alcohol abuse because they're not taking care of themselves, because they're traveling more, because there is a weight that's put on them emotionally or psychologically that they may not have prepared for. You understand what I'm saying? And so they begin to rely on unhealthy relationships. They may step out on their spouse if they're not grounded. You understand what I'm saying? They may try drugs that they've never tried before, probably never smoked a joint in their life. But here's, hey, we were out west for the first time, and then, it's an experience. Okay? You may take that first drink. These are critical times here in the expansion period. So understand it going into it, what it actually means. Another thing about that expansion is the trust factor. You can be in a situation where now the team needs to be larger because not only do you have your East Coast team, but you have your Midwest team or your Southern team down in Florida. You have your West Coast team, and then you have a lot of people on the payroll. You have a lot of people who need or want and need their needs met as well. And so, you're responsible for much more than when you were in that foundational phase or your building phase, obviously. And so the trust factor comes into play because relationships can be a thing that there's a lot to be said for that, but relationships can become unhealthy. And if there's no trust there, things can really blow up a lot worse than you could possibly imagine. Whew, boy, I tried to walk around that as sensitively as possible, but I hope you get the idea. Another thing about relationships is as you're transitioning through seasons, you want to make sure that the people you are involved with in each phase of the transition, the building, the maintenance phase, and the expansion, is that they know going in what the expectations are. That is absolutely critical. I mean that wholeheartedly because you can get burned or you can unintentionally burn the emotions of someone who thought they were going with you all the way. I mean, they were with you from the beginning. They helped you. They saw the vision. And then now you're in expansion and you're going, okay, well, they don't have the capacity to keep the stamina that's necessary for this level. And if you have to let them go, and if it's like a quick decision like that, if it's unexpected to them, if you haven't grounded them and grounded your relationship and had that conversation with them, it could be something that is really devastating. It could be family members. It could be a marriage. You understand? I mean, so many factors come into place here. And this is why I'm trying to take the time to be as thorough as possible about it, because I want you to know. I mean, these are some avenues that I've already traversed in, especially as far as family members are concerned, because there are relationships that have relied on you and everything was cool because you were in the maintenance phase. And now that you're spending, 2 or 3 weeks in another territory and you did not have that solid foundation, they were expecting one thing and you were expecting another. Boom. So you absolutely have to know who you are and know where you are. Finally, and since I'm not there yet, I can't speak much on this, but as all good things must come to an end, you have to realize that there's going to be a season where you finish strong and you're going to have to close down well. And that's where I started the conversation about it's kind of sad to see a musician or a creative person who are past their prime. I mean, here's the thing. Let me say this, because again, it's not an age thing, but if they don't understand the season that they're in, when they should be closing down, but they still think that they're, in the expansion phase or worse, in the maintenance phase, and they're still dressing like it and trying to play like it, but they look silly because you know what? You actually should be here. And that's maybe all I'll say about that, because on the flip side of things, conversely, I really respect people like Herbie Hancock, people like Chick Corea, people like Pat Metheny. These guys have been around for decades and are still strong, still doing their thing, still making it happen. So I'm not saying that it can't happen, for you, but they also know what season they're in. They don't have to do the 350 city tour. You know what I'm saying? They can do 14 cities in the U.S. and command just as much as if they were doing 300 cities. Can you dig it? So there are very few of us who aspire to that level or get to that level. Yet, it can happen. For you and I, though, I don't have any unrealistic expectations, and I'm getting ready to tell you about that. I don't have any unrealistic expectations. I don't want you to have any unrealistic expectations. I want you to dream big, but understand the situation, understand the season that you're in. So I wanted to share those things with you because I come from a personal dynamic, and that is I've been asked a lot of questions about the band Sound Doctrine that we began back in 2001, and why is it that you've stepped out to do this solo thing? And I'll tell you a few reasons. Because it has to do with seasons. And as I said before, I have 1,000 stories, but I don't have time to tell you 1,000 stories, and I'm sure you don't have time to listen to them all. But a few of those stories came about because I didn't understand the season that I was in. With respect to Sound Doctrine, we played our last show back in 2016. Yeah, 2016, June 21st, I think it was. And I had made a decision after that show to kind of put things on pause. The transition began happening when we were on the upswing, when we were actually transitioning. 2006, 2007, 2008 were great years for Sound Doctrine. We were doing some traveling. Our name was happening. We were starting to chart on the radio. The Weather Channel was playing our music. It was really starting to grow. April 26, however, of 2008, my mom passed unexpectedly. It was a blow to us as a family. No one was expecting it. And my sister did an incredible job of handling mom's business, making sure her estate was taken care of and whatnot. So from that standpoint, it was cool. But from an emotional standpoint, I was pretty much devastated. My daughters were young at the time. They were like 7 and 10 years old. My oldest one, she was about 19, I think. It was just a real blow to our family because mom was like the matriarch. With my girls in that age, I began doing a lot of evaluation about the type of dad that I wanted to be. It was important for me to be a father in the home. It was important for me to see my children grow up and not be calling them from Delaware or a hotel from Baltimore or down in D.C. or wherever, because we were traveling those routes a lot. It was important for me to be at home. And so I made a conscientious decision to do that, which obviously, took my brothers in Sound Doctrine by some surprise. The gigs I could do, I would do, but at the same time, I could not have this hold on them where if they were available for another gig, which they started doing, they started booking gigs as well as they should have. Done that because, they have family, they have lives, they have needs that need to be met as well. And so it wasn't about, Jere's vision at that time. It was about what was best for them. So we started, of course, as any other band would do, is subbing out. So, we transitioned through 2 or 3 different saxophone players, 3 or 4 different keyboard players, bass players, the whole regard until, playing that gig on June 21st in 2016. I'm like, yo, I'm the only cat that's up here from the original Sound Doctrine. So they didn't, the music was tight, but it wasn't the same chemistry. It wasn't the same energy. It wasn't the same spiritual flow, if you can understand that. So I decided to put that on hold. And earlier this year, actually last year, 2018, I began to have conversations with some of the former members of Sound Doctrine, as well as some young blood, of saying, okay, what does this look like for 2020? Because we were going to use 2019 as that year to build. However, as I began putting music together for what I thought that looked like, I asked for them to assemble some of their original compositions as well. It seems like I had all of this stuff that was just kind of laying around. And, I'm going to share my faith here. Very, the way I talk is like the Lord, I heard his voice, and that you're asking me, for new stuff, to download new stuff into you to write for this new project. But what about all of this stuff? So some of these songs on Fish and Grits are 30 years old. Some are 20 years old, plus I think there's only a couple that I wrote from scratch, but the rest of them, I redid them all. We got the singers to come back in, Janice Jones, who we call the First Lady of Sound Doctrine, Michaela Wright, who has been around for a long time, and a few other great people, Eric Tyus on guitar, Jeremy Lucas on keys, came in and just really, helped to make this solo project what it is. And so we've tested the waters with it. We put it out just the other day, Wednesday, September 11th. I'll tell you a little bit more about that, and then I'll tell you about Sound Doctrine. But as you know, as you've watched the EntreMusician, I had this thing about Spotify. We did the Spotify challenge, and we had some great interviews about the challenge and people who are actually doing it. Well, this time I checked the box. So I'm going to find out, does it work for this solo CD? If so, on the next Sound Doctrine project, we'll put our stuff back up there. So with respect to that, we're just testing the waters for it. Also testing this new company called Emanate, which is designed for the musician, the independent musician, the EntreMusician, but it pays out in cryptocurrency. So I'm new to cryptocurrency, of course, but I see it on the rise. So we've put this album, Fish and Grits, up for Emanate as well. Go to emanate.live to learn more about what they're doing for the EntreMusician. In fact, a young man, we interviewed him here at the EntreMusician a couple months ago, and he was telling us about it when it was in its beta phase. So it's live right now. So we'll see what happens with that. With respect to Sound Doctrine is in our building phase. Okay, because we're having to put the whole team back together again. And so we understand that we've gone through this one cycle. Now what we need to do is focus on building the brand of Sound Doctrine. The next album will be called Vision. Our heart is it will be released in 2020, and it's going to be a departure from, of course, Fish and Grits, because it's going to be more on the jazz side of things, more instrumental than this album is here. So I'm walking through these phases of seasons, which is why I felt it best that I share with you what's happening. I'm sorry that this video is just a little longer than I normally go, but I felt it best to share with you what I'm walking through, and so I can only share with you what I have. Now, I know I've left out something, and this is where you come in. I would love for you to comment on your experience with seasons and where you were in transitions and what worked for you and what didn't work for you, so that we can continue to strengthen this EntreMusician community and be here for each other. So absolutely share the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you haven't gone to sounddoctrine.com, please do so. Please join us at the EntreMusician.com, because you're going to see a merging, because I'm going to be in a season where I'm going to need to kind of talk about the two entities and be a little put them together a little bit, have a little more balance in the season, as I've tried to keep them separate before. Well, this is not the season for that. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. My name is Jere B. I am the EntreMusician. So are you. We will see you next time. God bless.